Are you talking? I can't hear you. Rahima, can you? Okay. I hear some background noise now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay,
Cool.
right. Okay, so I believe the session is live now.
Are we live? All right. Oh, we're
Yeah.
online. Nice.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live session. My name is Rahima Wasti, Marketing Executive at Line Dev, as you all know, and I'm thrilled to be your host today. We have an exciting topic to discuss, one that is especially relevant as we head into 2024. We'll be talking about ongoing debate of hybrid versus native app development and why many smart developers are choosing hybrid for the future. Joining me today is none other than our founder, Mr. Philip Cutting, who will be sharing his insights on this topic as well as offering an advice on skill development, networking, and navigating a career in increasingly digital world. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you, Rahima. It's great to be here while I am enjoying the weather at the Black Sea here in Bulgaria. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic. This is a fun conversation for me. It's something we take a lot of thought when we consider every project. So I know it's dear to everybody's mind when they're starting out the project. Where should we start? So it's important for both developers and for business owners. So I'm excited to go through this discussion with you.
Great. We can see the view behind you. It's great. We just saw that. Let's kick things
Oh,
off
let
by
me
laying
show
the
you. Let
groundwork
me show
here.
everybody again. You can't see right now because the
Sure,
sun is
sure,
about to
sure.
set, but there it is.
Ah,
This is over the seaside.
beautiful.
On the opposite side of the hotel, you see the beach side with all the sand and the umbrellas and all the kids running around having fun.
Yeah, you picked the right place. Let's kick things off by laying the groundwork here, Philip. Could you start by explaining the fundamental differences between native and hybrid app development for those in our audience who might be new to this debate?
Absolutely. So native app development is when you build apps specifically for one platform like iOS, Android, maybe the new Tesla phone that'll come up in the future, right? The X phone, if he ever develops that. But it's using their respective languages and technologies and tools, right? Right at the hardware level, right? So the integration is seamless. It's the best of every world except for economies, right? It's expensive because you have to build a separate
Yeah, it is.
app for each platform that you're going to build on. And hybrids, they're on a different level, right? So they allow developers to build
Mhm.
one code base and to have apps that work across multiple platforms, multiple devices, maybe even web, right? Depending on the platform, the way it's integrated. So the benefit of it, the big benefit is that you have a single code base, and they're typically using frameworks like React Native, Flutter, uh, and they give faster development than you'd be able to do if you had to create multiple different platforms.
Great, that's a great breakdown, Phil. I'm aware of the fact that developers today are often torn down between the two, which brings me to our next point is that is why are more developers gravitating toward hybrid development in 2024? What do you think is driving this trend?
Oh, sure. It's a great question. So the shift is largely driven by the efficiency and cost savings. Businesses today
Mhm.
want to have faster time to market with lower development costs, and the new hybrid technologies allow us to give a very good user experience, so that they can now kind of make the choice, hey, is it worth it? And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between native apps and hybrid apps. So that bridge between the two is really narrowing down. And because of that, we find that it's just so um so enticing to bite this fruit that allows us to have one code base to develop quick.
Yeah.
We don't have to have 2 or 3 teams of developers, right? We just need our front end developers that work with the hybrid apps and the server guys. And sometimes you can even find in your one platform. In the so additionally, frameworks just like Flutter and React Native, they already matured a lot in the past few years, right? So back in 2022, um, I was really looking down on cross-platform, even though
Mhm.
it was growing technology and it was stable at the time. But in just in 2023, React Native exploded in possibility with one of their newer updates. Now, 2024, we're seeing Flutter doing a similar thing. They've made a step in technology, and the platform accessibility
Yeah.
that's made it very, very enticing recently. There are downsides, right? But the big
Mhm.
parts that are having the flexibility and scalability that just make a real excellent choice for most of our use cases. Not all of them, right? And there are times when you really want to go native apps, and uh, some of them it could be as nuanced as you really
Mhm.
want to have very exact control over the way an app looks, right? You just want to have that native interface, and then it's
Completely
cool to go
agree.
native, right? But
Yeah.
on the other side, if you're looking to have one team that can do your server stuff and your app stuff, right? React Native might be the way to go. Um, but recently with Flutter, right now we can create custom code bases for our native components for Android and iOS uh,
Yeah.
apps, right inside one Flutter app. So we kind of have the business logic housed together in one component, and then we can access hardware level stuff at the with Flutter, unlike we've been able to do before. React Native, it lets us do a little bit of that tinkering, but right now Flutter's really taking the lead on that one.
Great, I completely agree to that. And from a marketing perspective, it's crucial to have that agility in the digital marketplace. In today's fast-paced world, a business can't afford long development cycles. That is one true thing. And so, for developers looking to embrace hybrid development, what skills should they focus on building? Is there a particular roadmap for that you would suggest for someone transitioning from native to hybrid?
Sure. So if you're a native developer looking to transition, the first thing I'd suggest is familiar yourself with JavaScript, especially if
Mhm.
you're leaning towards React Native. You'll also want to get comfortable with cross-platform development principles. So there's different ways you go about designing them, and there's some concepts that you want to make sure that you understand. Because if you're an iOS developer, Android handles things a little bit differently. So get into the material design, right, and get into the a little bit, at least a surface level of how the state management works on the different operating systems, different environments, and just dig into it a little bit, right? It's not so scary, and there's a lot of information out there to help you make that transition fairly fast. Um, so the reason I throw out JavaScript to be one of the first skills I look at is because React Native it's built on it, and a lot of server environments are completely run by JavaScript. So that one skill is really going to give you some powerful tools in your handbag.
That's absolutely right, and that was such a good advice from your end. I've noticed that learning JavaScript is really becoming non-negotiable for modern developers. It is being really crucial. Personally, I've seen how it opens up so many doors for us, not just in app development, but across the web and mobile solutions. Shifting gears a bit, let's talk about networking. What advice would you give to developers trying to build a strong network in this increasingly digital world?
So for you guys that are skilled and making that transition, this is sometimes a hard and scary thing to do, because there's a kind of comfort in where you're at, right? And then there's, I want to be able to perform at a high level. So you'll be surprised if, by having some friends and online friends and being active in forums and stuff, how quickly you can get caught up to the new stack, right? Technology stack, where you can really take both of uh your older skills and your new skills time together. And just by having that little bit of social network is going to do a couple of things. One is going to help you realize when you're kind of going down the wrong rabbit hole, right? It's always somebody to help you out with that early on. And the and just keep in mind of what's out there for technologies for us to network, right? So we have GitHub, we have Slack, we have Stack Overflow, we have LinkedIn, right, with technical orders, we have Medium articles, right? And so
Absolutely.
these are, yeah, these are great places to both learn and to share what you've learned, and to help point out uh to, issues or philosophies that help make you a little bit of a thought leader, or to just help get yourself more familiar with the new technologies as you're going through it. I found that it helps me a lot when I do that. So I'm never scared to ask, anybody for advice when I'm trying out the new stuff. Also, there's a lot of online content for mini courses for people to kind of speed on these courses. Those are good if you're transitioning to form. And just go to meetups and any kind of virtual and physical events where people actually talking and sharing experiences and having fun. uh, for me, anytime you can grab a beer or a glass of water, coffee, and talk about development with some new friends, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is fun, and that was such a valuable insight from your end. Building relationships within developer community is actually really important these days, because for both personal growth and career opportunities. Now let's move on to the other question, and that is about career navigation. We are getting a lot of such questions from our audience as well. How should developers position themselves for success in an ever-evolving tech landscape?
Okay, so obviously we have to stay flexible, right? And learning to be able to adapt to change is really just a skill we have to have nowadays, right? We're not, it's kind of
Absolutely.
getting harder and harder to just say, hey, this is my tech stack for life, right? Just have that flexibility. And the technology we're using today might be the same ones you'll use in 5 years. So focus on the leading technology stacks now, and um, try to grow along a niche, right? I often recommend having
Yeah,
your personal niche, having your personal interest, and growing along in
that
that
is
line.
so important.
Yeah, it helps you create great examples. It helps you to be able to teach inside that niche and in that technology stack that you're doing. And also, don't pigeonhole yourself into one framework or language. The I'm going to give the caveat: make sure you get depth in a language before you start learning a bunch of other stuff. But if you've been developing for 3 5 years, you have that depth.
Yeah,
You should have that depth, right? If you understand the fundamentals of the technology, and enough libraries out there, sources to make regular apps happen, then it's time to start experiments. I mean, growing and playing some other languages, playing with some other environments,
absolutely.
IDEs, right? Be adventurous, and to have some fun with it. It's you'll be surprised how much you've learned from one language carries over to language and programming, and the differences. Learning those differences might actually make you better in your original language. I don't urge this too early, right? I know a lot of colleges like to really throw many languages at kids in their first couple of year or two, but get
Yeah,
that base solid first, get your fundamentals, and then start bouncing around. So hopefully that's not too big of an answer.
yeah,
Experiment, have fun, but make sure you build your
no, that
foundations.
is, yeah, absolutely. The ability to, I believe, adapt and stay curious is something that sets you apart from the rest. And moving on to the next question is from a business strategy perspective. What would you say are the biggest benefits of hybrid apps for companies looking to scale in 2024?
Okay. For me, apps offer scalability at a lower cost with quicker development times. They are they're tailored to be generalist tools, so you can get apps out
Mhm.
pretty quick with the general setups. And there's enough libraries out there to help you get products out there quickly if you have the mindset of getting something out quick to market a quick MVP, uh, getting the feedback, get funding, and growing your business. It's a great way to help you do that because you can get both in a short amount of time. You can get both your Android apps and your iOS apps, and to get it out there. Now, sometimes you're going to find that you may have a hard time getting your app on the iOS store, but it's smooth on the
Mhm.
Google Play Store, and sometimes vice versa. Nowadays, it's crazy, right? But having this hybrid
Yeah.
app solution allows you to reduce your risk and to get it out there, right? So, and once your project out there, it's easier to then kind of the opposing store to give yourself time to work on stuff, to still have people test while you're going through it early on, and to work through all the problems that you do. The there's we all this philosophy: fail fast and correct quickly. So it's about being fail fast in small ways with the minimal risk, and hybrid apps really advantage in that.
Yeah, and you're talking about this, and that is actually a really huge advantage for us. Hybrid development is something that seems to strike the right balance. And moving on to the next question for developers who want to explore hybrid development as a career path, where do you see the most important opportunities for them?
Oh, sure. So I find a lot of initiative in startups, in SaaS companies,
Mhm.
and nowadays it's getting it's really working its way even into larger enterprises. Larger enterprises in this past year have really been looking at ways for them to simplify their business operations, to maximize the output of their employees, to get rid of clout, and to kind of have to compete in a market where sometimes not you can't get all the resources you want. So by working with these hybrid apps, developers understand they get a vocabulary that works on both multiple platforms, right? And it allows them to develop faster, and it's a big benefit for companies because instead of having three guys, minimum three guys, right? You can maybe find
Mhm.
one or two decent freelancers, right, or an agency that can develop things faster for you, more economically, and can take on um, and you can handle multiple project paths at the same time, right? So
Interesting.
there's when you have two apps, right, two separate apps,
Mhm.
and native iOS and native Android, right, you suddenly have a large management overhead where you have to keep both teams on the same vector, and then you have to kind of negotiate the differences in between the two. And it's very easy for two separate teams to veer off course or to pull away from each other and where they're developing. So it's important that you have a similar experience being platforms. Then it's another reason to stick with hybrid apps.
Yeah, I believe the flexibility of hybrid development seems to open up a lot of avenues for both employment and entrepreneurship. What are some common challenges that developers face when transitioning to hybrid, and how can they overcome them?
Oh, sure. So one challenge is adapting to write once and run
Mhm.
anywhere um, mental process, right? It sounds great in theory, but in practice, you still need to tweak the app for different platforms, and
Mhm.
this uh, this can be a little challenging, right? Especially if you're new to it. More seasoned designers, developers make this easier for you, right? And
Yeah.
issues are performance issues can really crop up in unexpected ways, right? So you have to make sure that you're testing, you're testing, you're making sure that it's within tolerance, And
Yeah.
the another thing is that apps can become complex quick, right? So you have a lot of libraries and a lot of tools to help you build apps, and you may have to change the solutions that you use and the libraries that you're using to produce apps. And this can be both a challenge and a blessing that we have this ability to do it. But you have to just have that mentality. Hey, I'm going to get it out there. I'm going to test it, make sure it's working, and if it's good, cool. Right now, sometimes with cross-platform, you have to accept good enough is great
Mhm.
sometimes, because you can really run. You can really go a long time and hold yourself up trying to chase perfection with cross-platform. If that perfection is the critical thing, really native might be the way to go, and it's good to know that early on. So I think those are kind of like the biggest ones, and a lot of the ways to overcome this is just knowing the tool set that you have to optimize the code and to check it and make sure that you're just running clean, right? You're writing clean code, modular code, uh, state driven code is great tools, great process to develop,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And it's just an evolution. And if you can have somebody reviewing your code that's more experienced than you, or even just fresh eyes sometimes. One thing that I do is
Yeah.
I have guys on small projects, right, where there's not a big team involved.
Mhm.
I like to have the guys do self-review pull requests. So what this means is when
Great.
you're developing with a repository and you're creating small chunks of work, right? Half day chunk of work or 200 changes, right? In a code. This might be 200 additions or 100 additions and some changes, right? Or even just cleaning up formatting, right? But just going back there and reviewing your own pull request to changes your mindset and makes it so you look at it from a different creative process, and
Absolutely.
when we do this, we'll all laugh at ourselves, right, or curse ourselves, right, depending on our mood. So
Yeah.
it's easy to catch a lot of your stuff, your learning challenges, and sometimes even your own mistakes when you review your own pull request. And there's a lot of tools out there that help you do that. So other than
Yeah,
that,
that was
just
such a
having
good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just getting familiar with the different expectations that people have with iOS and Android, and you can learn a
Mhm.
lot of that through material design and through Apple's guidelines, human interface guidelines, um, and that you can learn a lot from both those. If you go through that, you'll be well on your ways to managing any hybrid app.
Absolutely, that was such a solid point. And I wonder the understanding the quirks of different platforms helps developers to create smoother, more consistent experiences. And before we wrap up, I would wanna open the stage for our audience to ask some questions from you, as I learn a lot from you. So the first one is asking, what exactly is the difference between hybrid and native development?
So the question is, what's the biggest difference between hybrid and native?
Yeah.
Okay, so different IDs, right? And now you're a lot of times you'll be using Xcode, right? If you're an iOS, now you might be using the VS Code or whatever, right? So there's different languages involved, and there's different tools that
Mhm.
you use to help build those. The other than the tool set, which is obvious, and the different languages, right? They have different philosophies how you develop it, and just by going through the best practices of the hybrid platform that you're using, it's going
Mhm.
to help guide you through those fairly seamlessly, right? Now, React Native, right? It's a very different philosophy than what you get with a Flutter, right? So Flutter and Dart, the programming language Dart goes hand in hand. So, and it's a nice language, right? It's not the best. I prefer Kotlin, but Dart's nice compared to JavaScript with React Native, which we there's the whole industry has a love-hate relationship for JavaScript, right? But different
Exactly. Yeah.
philosophies, right? So choosing which direction you want to begin is also going to be helpful into progressing along and seeing the differences. But yeah, if you're going from like
Yeah.
iOS to React Native,
Mhm.
you're going to hate script.
All right.
And there you may love it. Actually, JavaScript can be a lot of fun if when you jump into it. Just all the Swift guys, they go from iOS to React Native for the first like month or two want to hit balls. The but when they realize they can go on server side and fix all the stuff and enhance APIs and get work done faster and deploy and manage the whole cycle themselves, they feel like mini gods. So
Oh,
it is worth
right. Great. So the next question is, what advancements in hyper development do you foresee in 2024 and beyond?
I think we're going to continue the path to getting closer to the hardware level. And just
Mhm.
like we did with Flutter recently, where now we can really do very, very specific interactions with devices. Now that process is going to continue, I think. Now there's like some conflict in this. One is, why have a cross-platform environment? You're going to end up programming in Kotlin or um, um, Swift anyways, right? And for me,
Yeah.
you still have all the advantages of that cross-platform app, and you can use it where you have those specific challenges, right? For me, Flutter is the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking IoT devices, right, or wearables. So that ability is going to be more and more, I think, expected, right? It's going to create some
All
hazards,
right.
but it's
Mhm.
going to improve as it goes. Virtual reality and augmented reality, that's going to just become part of our lives, I think, in like 3 to 5 years. We all, obviously, everybody knows AI is built into a lot of Android now, right? So it's just this processor revolution for AI is going to continue, and I'm
Mhm.
curious on how that's going to affect cross-platform apps, or and apps in general. I think it's fairly exciting to see where that's heading. Um, and otherwise, I think it's going to have a similar progression as progressive web apps does, right? Where it's getting so convenient to use that you almost forget that you can program in native apps. And sometimes you even
Yeah.
have to, it's gotten to the point where already it's gotten to the point when I say to myself, do I really need a native app, or can we get away with a cross-platform app? And every month I have to go back and I look at the weaknesses and compare it to say, hey, is this still this line, right? Because that line in the sand, it keeps moving back to getting more and more advantageous for hybrid apps. Maybe in the future there's just going to be uh, like progressive web apps really might take over the world, and it'll be like the next level hybrid apps. I don't see that coming for a few years yet, right? There's as for me, there's still a lot of weaknesses in progressive web apps, which is why I like to recommend those if the problem fits itself. But more than not, I'm finding hybrid apps are the way to go. So where's it going to
Great.
be in the
That was
future?
such
I
a
think it's just that vector.
great. Noted. And does hyper development require different skill sets compared to native development?
It requires a little broader mindset. So
Mhm.
when you've gotten used to developing in one native platform, iOS or Android, you really get stuck in that mindset, and you either forget or don't even know the considerations of the other platform or platforms, right? If you're looking at web also. So if as long as you keep that open mindset and stay updated on the 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 major platforms for their design philosophies, you'll be able to keep up with any progressions and changes that evolve over time. And we have to do this anyways, right? So if you're an Android user, you're always looking at the material design philosophies, right? You're looking at the updates, right? Because even though developers shouldn't have to carry the hat of user experience engineer, right, UX engineer, they generally have to have an understanding of it, so to work through when something isn't fitting right. So it's most of us tend to do that anyways. So you just have to keep in mind that there's that other philosophy for those other platforms, and maintain your familiarity with those. It's just a little extra reading, just not a big thing.
Yeah, great, understood. And that's okay. There is another question: which hybrid frameworks are most popular right now, and why?
React Native and Flutter. I think React Native largely is the go-to one.
Mhm.
If I'm talking to my friends and recommend which way to go between Flutter and React Native, a lot of the times it's React Native. Some of the reasons being is that more people have an understanding of JavaScript than do of the Dart language, programming language. Another side thing is I like Flutter more, right? I like the technology better, but Google is going to go. I'm going to get shut down for this. Google is kind of like a little bit here and there, right? We all know that Google will
Mhm.
end a project whenever they feel like it, right? So there's that risk that one day Flutter doesn't make the progress it needs to, and Google just says, yeah, we're not going to use that anymore. So generally, I lean to React Native. I'd choose the two. Maybe the difference is if you are a computer scientist, right, and
Yeah.
you're familiar, you're able to just right, and you like that object
Mhm.
oriented structure, then Flutter I think is a better way, just because it is more object oriented. Yeah, JavaScript has its object oriented TypeScript, right? So that, but these people, these are two mindsets. So, like hackers, if you're definitely go towards native. If you're more structural programmer, you might find just you enjoy Dart more.
And that was a great answer to the question. And I'd like to ask the last one from you. Why are more developers leaning towards hybrid development in 2024?
Say the question again. I just want to make sure I heard it right.
Why are more developers leaning towards hybrid development in 2024?
I Because there's a lot of work for hybrid apps. So there's a lot of people
Mhm.
that are looking for React Native developers, and you can almost solve any mobile app project with React Native nowadays. So it's natural that you can help solve more business problems, and startups love
Mhm.
it, right? There's almost no better
Yeah,
option for a startup than a hybrid app anyways. So yeah, there's just a need for it, demand for it, and the economies of scale, and with inflation, everybody's trying to save a little bit more money and to be more efficient,
exactly.
right? Which is a good philosophy when you're a startup, right? You should be going in there trying to
Absolutely.
spend as little money as possible, right? Make sure you hire the right talent, because that's going to cost you in the long run, or even the short run. But get the good team, best team out there that you can afford to do the work for you, and see where you can save. Hybrid is one of those places that a lot of entrepreneurs are looking towards. So I think that's why it's becoming very popular this year.
Great. And what are some common issues with debugging and testing in hybrid apps?
It's a challenge, right? So um one of the biggest challenges is that you need to get some hardware to test
Mhm.
on, because a lot of the times the virtual machines don't know all the bugs, right? Or maybe there's a bug that happens on a virtual machine, but it doesn't happen on hardware,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
that's probably the biggest hang up for debugging, right? Now every language has its tools for debugging. You should learn the debugger, right? That's in the ID. That's the thing you should do when you're learning a program, right? But I'm not going to mention that because everybody in the audience is way past that, of course.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, Philip, any final thoughts on why hybrid development is a smart choice for 2024 and how developers can thrive in this space?
So I don't think it's always the right choice, right? I think you need to consider both your needs and the needs of your app. And if you can keep the app generally simple, right, and not right up on the highest newest technology of a particular phone, then you can perhaps build an app faster. You can not have to worry about managing multiple teams and keeping multiple development teams on a parallel track, which can be really hard sometimes. And you can get out there and develop products, especially for startups, right, and early SaaS companies that are going to allow you to hit the market fast and hard and in a way that's amazing. If you're a developer, you really shine when you're using cross-platform because you're giving the person all the choices. You're giving your employer or contractor you're working for double the options, because with one base now you have access to Android and iOS, and potentially even a easy transition into a web app.
And that's great. That's a great note to end on. And thank you so much, Philip, for sharing your insight with us today. I'm sure our audience has gained a lot of valuable information about hybrid versus native development and the skills they need to see. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and stay connected with us on LinkedIn and keep this conversation going.
Thanks, Rahima, and to everyone for joining us. Let's keep moving forward and embrace technologies. I am so much enjoying the weather and the view today.
The view was
God bless
great.
everybody.
The view was great. Take care. Goodbye.